Hello, everyone. I hope you had a great holiday season. My family and I enjoyed getting outdoors on Christmas Day. I know my oldest daughter, Alice, is smiling with that shovel, but I think she enjoyed eating the snow more. In this month's video, I want to review what we could see in 2026 for the stock markets. We are coming up to potentially the 8th straight month higher for the S&P 500, which I'll discuss what we often see after this happens. Also, I want to touch on what a US midterm election year could bring. So, let's start with where the markets currently are. As I mentioned, we are potentially seeing the 8th straight month higher for the S&P 500. Now you might be thinking, wow, now is the time to get out. It can't just keep going higher. Well, I agree, the stock market doesn't just go higher all the time. So let's look at what history says could happen next. Here's a chart going back to 1950 with what the S&P 500 does after 8-month win streaks. I want to draw your attention to the middle of the chart where the rows say average, median, higher count, and percentage higher. You'll see 0.3% as the average S&P return next month after an 8-month win streak. And this only happens 50% of the time. However, go a few more numbers over, and you'll see the S&P is up 6 months later 6.6% on average and 90% of the time. Bottom line, an 8-month win streak isn't a warning sign long-term for the market. Short-term, we might see a pause. However, long-term, historically, there are still solid returns. Now I want to move on to what we see during US midterm election years, like 2026 is going to be. Here's a chart going back to 1950 that shows how big of market pullbacks and returns a year later we see during the US 4-year presidential election cycles. First year in office, like 2025 was for Trump, we see on average a 12.9% pullback. This year, we saw an 18.9% pullback in the first few months of the year. You can see in the US midterm election years, we often see the largest pullback for the S&P out of any year at 17.5%. That could be the bad news for 2026. The good news is a year later, on average, we see a return of 31.7%. Bottom line, I do think we are going to see the markets move higher in 2026. But we could see some type of pullback that will make investors uncomfortable. To help put clients' mind at ease, I am structuring my managed account portfolios to weather the storm. This includes having alternative investments that will help lower the volatility and good quality companies that pay consistent dividends. Remember, be fearful when others are greedy and greedy when others are fearful. Warren Buffett. As always, I'll stay in touch next month with my thoughts on the markets. Talk soon.